I can't stop with thought Đâu mấy thinking đâu mấy need for Yeah, you find me my hotel for twice.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to Positive English Podcast. My name is Nylor, and I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide on this journey to mastering English while keeping your spirits high. Now, for episode number 11, we've got something truly special lined up for you. We're going to be diving into episode 11, How to Think in English Like a Native, no translation, just fluency. Host, hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, and I am absolutely thrilled to have you joining me for another power-packed episode designed to skyrocket your English fluency. Now, if you've been on this English learning journey for a while, you've probably hit that point where you can understand quite a bit, maybe even speak with some confidence. But there's still that lag. That little pause where you mentally translate from your native language into English, and then finally get the words out. Well, today, we are going to tackle that head on. We're diving deep into a game-changing technique that separates intermediate learners from truly fluent speakers, thinking in English. That's right, we're talking about bypassing that internal translator altogether and accessing the English language directly, just like a native speaker. This isn't some magical trick, folks. It's a skill that can be developed with conscious effort and the right strategies. And trust me, once you start to make this shift, you'll notice a massive difference in your speaking speed, your natural flow, and your overall confidence. You'll be able to participate in conversations more spontaneously, understand nuances more intuitively, and truly feel connected to the English language. So, are you ready to ditch the mental gymnastics of translation and unlock a whole new level of fluency? Then stick with me, because in this episode, we are going to break down exactly how to think in English like a native speaker. Let's get started. Host, alright, so let's address the elephant in the room right away. Why is thinking in your native language and then translating such a big hurdle to fluency? Well, there are several key reasons. Firstly, speed and spontaneity. Think about a native English speaker having a conversation. They don't have to mentally go through the process of formulating a thought in another language and then finding the equivalent English words and grammatical structures. Their thoughts are already in English. This allows for a much faster and more spontaneous flow of conversation. When you're constantly translating, you're adding an extra step, a processing delay, that makes it difficult to keep up with the natural pace of spoken English. It's like trying to run a race with weights on your ankles. You can do it, but it's much slower and requires a lot more effort. Secondly, accuracy and naturalness. Languages are not perfect one-to-one mappings of each other. What sounds natural and correct in your native language might sound awkward or even grammatically incorrect when directly translated into English. Think about idioms, phrasal verbs, and subtle nuances of meaning. These often don't have direct equivalents, and trying to force a translation can lead to misunderstandings or just plain strange-sounding English. You might get the general idea across, but it won't have that native-like ring to it. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. You can force it, but it's not the right fit. Thirdly, cognitive load and mental fatigue. Constantly translating is mentally exhausting. Your brain is working overtime trying to manage two language systems simultaneously. This can lead to feeling overwhelmed, making more mistakes, and ultimately getting discouraged. You might find yourself avoiding speaking English altogether because it feels like such a mental strain. It's like trying to juggle too many balls at once. Eventually, you're going to drop some. Finally, deeper understanding and cultural connection. Language isn't just about words and grammar, it's deeply intertwined with culture and the way people think. When you think directly in English, you start to absorb the nuances, the underlying assumptions, and the cultural context embedded within the language. You begin to understand why native speakers say things the way they do, rather than just what they are saying. This leads to a much richer and more authentic understanding of the English-speaking world. It's like watching a movie with subtitles versus understanding the original dialogue. You get a much deeper appreciation for the story and the characters when you understand the language directly. So, it's clear that breaking free from the translation habit is crucial for achieving true fluency. But how do we actually start thinking in English? It's not like flipping a switch, right? Absolutely not. It's a gradual process that requires conscious effort and the implementation of specific strategies. Let's dive into some powerful techniques you can start using today. Host. Okay, so the first crucial step in training your brain to think in English is to immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking: I don't live in an English-speaking country. How can I immerse myself? And that's a valid point. True immersion, where you're surrounded by English speakers all day long, is incredibly beneficial, but it's not the only way to create an immersive environment. The key here is to actively seek out and engage with English in your daily life. Think about your current routines. Where can you inject more English? Let's start with your listening habits. Instead of listening to music or podcasts in your native language during your commute, while you're exercising, or when you're doing chores, switch to English language content. There are literally millions of podcasts out there covering every topic imaginable, from news and current events to hobbies and storytelling. Find podcasts that interest you, even if you only understand a portion of what's being said at first. The goal is to get your ears accustomed to the rhythm, intonation, and flow of spoken English. The same goes for visual media. Instead of watching movies and TV shows dubbed in your native language, watch them in English with subtitles. Initially, you might rely heavily on the subtitles, and that's okay. But as you progress, try to gradually reduce your reliance on them. Pay attention to how the characters are speaking, their body language, and the context of the situation. You'll start to make connections between the spoken English and the visual cues. For an extra challenge, try watching content in English with English subtitles. This can help you associate the written word with the spoken sound and reinforce vocabulary. Don't underestimate the power of music. Listening to English songs and actively trying to understand the lyrics can be a fun and engaging way to immerse yourself. Look up the lyrics online, sing along, and try to understand the meaning behind the words. This can help you learn new vocabulary and improve your pronunciation and rhythm. Beyond passive listening and watching, try to incorporate active engagement with English. If you enjoy reading, switch to English books, articles, or blog posts on topics that interest you. Start with materials that are at your current level and gradually challenge yourself with more complex texts. Pay attention to new vocabulary and how words are used in context. Keep a vocabulary journal to note down new words and their definitions in English. Another powerful tool is changing the language settings on your devices and social media accounts to English. This might seem like a small thing, but it exposes you to English vocabulary and phrasing in a context you're already familiar with. You'll be seeing English words for things you use every day, like settings, notifications, profile, and share. This constant exposure can subtly reinforce your understanding and help you start thinking in English in those everyday digital interactions. And finally, if you have the opportunity, seek out interactions with English speakers. This could be through online language exchange partners, online communities, or even local meetups if there are English-speaking expats in your area. Actually speaking and listening in real time forces you to think on your feet in English and reduces your reliance on translation. Even if you feel nervous at first, the more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll become. Remember, creating an immersive environment is about making English a constant presence in your life, even if you are not physically surrounded by native speakers. The more you engage with the language actively and passively, the more your brain will start to naturally gravitate towards thinking in English. Now, once you've started to build that immersive foundation, the next crucial step is to start building your vocabulary directly in English. What do I mean by this? Well, instead of learning a new English word by immediately finding its equivalent in your native language, try to understand its meaning through English definitions, context clues, and visual aids. Think about the last time you learned a new English word. What was your first instinct? Probably to look it up in a bilingual dictionary or translation tool, right? While these tools can be helpful in the initial stages of learning, they can also reinforce that habit of constantly translating. To break free from this, you need to start training your brain to associate the English word directly with its English meaning and the concept it represents. So, how do you do this? Start by using an English dictionary. When you encounter a new word, look up its definition in English. Often, the definition will use other English words you already know, helping you to understand the new word within an English context. Many online English dictionaries also provide example sentences, which show you how the word is used in a natural way. Pay close attention to these examples. Don't underestimate the power of context clues. When you're reading or listening to English, try to infer the meaning of a new word from the surrounding words and sentences. Often, the context will give you enough information to understand the general idea, even if you don't know the exact definition. This skill of inferring meaning is crucial for fluent communication and for bypassing the need for immediate translation. Visual aids can also be incredibly helpful in building direct vocabulary associations. When you encounter a new noun, try to visualize the object it represents. If you're learning the word apple, picture a red, round fruit in your mind. You don't need to think of the word for apple in your native language first. Similarly, for verbs, try to visualize the action. If you're learning to run, picture someone moving quickly on their feet. Using a thesaurus in English can also help you expand your vocabulary and understand the subtle differences between related words without relying on translation. When you learn a new word, look it up in a thesaurus to find synonyms, other English words with similar meanings. This helps you build a network of related English words in your mind. For example, if you learn the word happy, looking it up in a thesaurus might give you synonyms like joyful, content, and pleased. Understanding these nuances in English helps you think more precisely and naturally. Create flashcards with English words on one side and English definitions or example sentences on the other. Avoid writing the translation in your native language. Review these flashcards regularly to reinforce your direct associations. You can also use spaced repetition software like Anki, which uses algorithms to show you flashcards at increasing intervals, optimizing your learning and retention. Label objects around your home with their English names. This constant visual reminder can help you start thinking of these everyday items directly in English without needing to translate from your native language word. The key here is to actively train your brain to connect the English word directly with its meaning and the concept it represents, rather than going through the intermediary step of your native language. It takes conscious effort, but the more you practice this, the stronger those direct English associations will become, and the less you'll rely on translation. Host, building your vocabulary directly in English is a fantastic start, but to truly think like a native, you need to move beyond individual words and start thinking in English phrases and chunks. Native speakers don't construct sentences word by word in their heads. They often think in common phrases, collocations, and sentence structures that they've heard and used countless times. Think about everyday conversations. How often do you hear phrases like "How's it going?" "Nice to meet you," "See you later," "What do you think?" Or "It depends on." These are chunks of language that native speakers access almost automatically. If you're still trying to construct these phrases word by word from your native language, it's going to slow you down significantly and might not even result in the most natural sounding English. So, how do you start thinking in these English chunks? Pay close attention to the phrases that native speakers use frequently. When you're watching movies, TV shows, or listening to podcasts, make a note of common expressions and how they're used in context. Don't just focus on individual words, try to understand the meaning of the entire phrase. Actively learn common collocations. These are words that naturally occur together in English, such as strong coffee, heavy rain, make a mistake, or take a shower. Learning these as pairs or groups will help you speak more fluently and naturally. There are many resources available online and in English language learning books that list common collocations. Use phrase books and online resources that focus on common English expressions. These resources often provide examples of how these phrases are used in different situations. Practice using these phrases in your own speaking and writing. When you encounter a new word, don't just learn its definition in isolation. Try to learn common phrases and sentence structures that include that word. For example, if you learn the word significant, note down phrases like a significant increase, a significant role, or significantly different. This will help you understand how the word functions in natural English. Practice using these phrases in your internal monologue. When you're thinking about your day or planning something, try to use English phrases instead of translating your thoughts word by word. For example, instead of thinking in your native language and then translating to "I need to go to the supermarket later," try to think directly in English. "I need to run to the grocery store later," or "I've got to go to the supermarket later." Engage in a lot of listening and reading. The more you're exposed to natural English, the more these common phrases and collocations will start to sink in. You'll begin to recognize patterns and understand how these chunks of language are used in different contexts. Over time, your brain will start to access these ready-made phrases automatically, reducing the need for conscious word-by-word construction and translation. The benefit of thinking in phrases and chunks is that it significantly speeds up your speaking and makes it sound much more natural. You'll be using language the way native speakers do, rather than piecing together translated words that might sound a bit off. It also reduces the cognitive load, as you're dealing with larger units of meaning rather than individual words, freeing up your mental energy to focus on the actual message you want to convey. So, make a conscious effort to move beyond individual words and start paying attention to and learning common English phrases and collocations. Practice using them in your own speaking and internal thoughts. This is a key step towards truly thinking in English like a native speaker. Host, now, let's talk about a really powerful technique that can help you bypass translation and think directly in English, visualizing and conceptualizing in English. This involves training your brain to associate English words and phrases directly with images, feelings, and concepts, rather than going through the intermediary step of your native language equivalent. Think about simple nouns like table, chair, or book. When a native English speaker thinks of these words, they likely conjure up a mental image of the object itself. They don't first think of the word in their native language and then translate it to the English word and then to the image. The connection is direct. Your goal is to build these direct connections for as many English words and phrases as possible. So, how do you start doing this? When you learn a new English word, actively try to create a mental image or concept associated with it. For example, if you learn the word joyful, try to recall a time you felt joyful or picture someone expressing joy. Connect the English word directly to that feeling or image. If you learn the verb to whisper, imagine someone speaking very softly. Use visual dictionaries and picture-based vocabulary learning resources. These resources present English words alongside clear images, helping you to establish that direct visual word connection. You can also create your own visual flashcards by drawing simple pictures or using online image search to find relevant visuals for new vocabulary. When you're reading or listening to English, pay attention to the context and try to create a mental movie in your head. Visualize the scenes being described, the actions taking place, and the emotions being conveyed. This helps you understand the meaning directly through the English context without needing to translate. For abstract words and concepts, try to associate them with feelings, experiences, or simple English definitions. For example, if you're learning the word freedom, you might associate it with the feeling of being unrestricted or the simple English definition, the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. Practice describing everyday objects and situations around you in English, focusing on the visual and sensory details. Instead of thinking in your native language and then translating, try to directly describe what you see, hear, smell, taste, and feel using English words. For example, if you see a red flower, think red flower and focus on the color and shape of the flower in your mind, without needing to think of the word for red or flower in your native language first. Engage in activities that encourage visual thinking in English, such as drawing or mind mapping using English words and concepts. This can help you solidify those direct associations between English and meaning. The more you practice visualizing and conceptualizing directly in English, the stronger these neural pathways will become. Eventually, your brain will start to bypass the translation process automatically, allowing you to understand and speak English more fluently and naturally. It's about training your brain to think in pictures and concepts when you encounter English, just like a native speaker does. Host, okay, we've laid the groundwork by focusing on immersion, building direct English vocabulary, thinking in chunks, and visualizing. Now, let's get down to the crucial part, actually practicing thinking in English. This isn't something that will happen passively. You need to actively engage in exercises that train your brain to think directly in the language. One of the most effective techniques is self-talk in English. Throughout your day, try to narrate your actions, thoughts, and observations to yourself in English. It doesn't matter if it's grammatically perfect at first, the goal is to get your brain accustomed to formulating thoughts and sentences directly in English. For example, When you're making breakfast, think I'm making coffee. I need to get the milk from the fridge. Now I'm pouring it into my cup. When you're walking down the street, think the sun is shining. There are many cars on the road. That building is very tall. Start with simple sentences and gradually increase the complexity as you become more comfortable. You can even have imaginary conversations with yourself in English. What would you say if you met a famous person? How would you order food at a restaurant? This kind of mental practice can significantly improve your ability to think on your feet in English. Another powerful exercise is to describe your daily activities in English, either verbally or in writing. At the end of the day, take a few minutes to recount what you did, who you spoke to, and what you thought about, all in English. This forces you to access English vocabulary and grammar to express your experiences directly. When you encounter a new situation or have a thought, consciously try to formulate that thought in English first, before even considering the translation in your native language. This takes deliberate effort, especially in the beginning, but it's crucial for breaking the translation habit. If you find yourself automatically thinking in your native language, make a conscious effort to switch to English as quickly as possible. Practice explaining simple concepts or ideas in English. Choose a topic you're familiar with, like your hobby or your job, and try to explain it to an imaginary person using only English. This forces you to think through the explanation in English and access the relevant vocabulary and phrasing directly. Engage in regular speaking practice with language partners or tutors, and consciously try to think in English during the conversation. Resist the urge to mentally translate everything you want to say. Instead, focus on accessing the English words and phrases you already know and trying to express your thoughts directly. It's okay to make mistakes, that's part of the learning process. The more you practice thinking and speaking in real time, the more natural it will become. Use prompts or questions to practice thinking in English. Find lists of conversation starters or thought-provoking questions and try to formulate your answers in English without translating. This can help you practice expressing your opinions and ideas directly in the language. Don't get discouraged if it feels difficult or slow at first. Thinking in English is a skill that takes time and consistent practice to develop. Be patient with yourself, celebrate small victories, and keep practicing. The more you consciously train your brain to think in English, the easier and more automatic it will become. Host, now, as you embark on this journey of thinking in English, you're likely to encounter some mental blocks and ingrained translation habits. It's perfectly normal to slip back into translating, especially when you're tired, stressed, or encountering complex ideas. The key is to be aware of these tendencies and have strategies to overcome them. One common mental block is encountering an unfamiliar word or phrase. Your immediate reaction might be to panic and mentally search for a translation. Instead, try to use context clues to infer the meaning. If that's not enough, try to circumlocute, which means explaining the concept in English using words you already know. For example, if you don't know the word screwdriver, you could say that tool you use to turn screws. This keeps you thinking and speaking in English without getting stuck on a single unknown word. Another challenge is the sheer speed of native speakers. When you're listening to a fast-paced conversation, it can be tempting to fall back on translation to try and keep up. Instead, focus on understanding the main ideas and key information. Don't try to translate every single word. Train your brain to grasp the overall meaning from the English itself. Be patient with yourself and acknowledge that breaking the translation habit takes time and consistent effort. There will be days when it feels easier than others. Don't get discouraged by setbacks. The fact that you're consciously working on this skill is a huge step forward. Practice in low-pressure situations. When you're practicing self-talk or speaking with a language partner who is also learning, you might feel less pressure to be perfect, which can make it easier to focus on thinking in English. Consciously make the decision to think in English, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. It's like learning any new skill, it feels awkward and unnatural in the beginning, but with practice, it becomes more fluid and automatic. Reward yourself for your progress. Acknowledge the times when you successfully think and speak in English without translating. This positive reinforcement can help motivate you to keep going. Remember that fluency isn't about knowing every single word or having perfect grammar, it's about being able to communicate effectively and spontaneously. Thinking in English is a crucial part of achieving that spontaneity. So, be persistent. And that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode of Positive English Podcast. I truly hope that you found today's lesson helpful, inspiring, and maybe even put a little smile on your face. Remember, learning English is a journey, and every step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to your goals. Keep practicing, stay positive, and most importantly, believe in yourself. Before we sign off for today, I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in and being a part of our Positive English community. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps us reach more learners just like you. And if you don't want to miss out on any of our future lessons packed with positivity and effective English learning strategies, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. Your likes, your shares, and your subscriptions are what keep this podcast going and allow us to continue creating content to support your English learning journey. So, thank you again for your incredible support. Alright everyone, that's all for today's episode. Keep up the fantastic work, stay positive, and I look forward to catching you in the next episode of Positive English Podcast. Until then, take care and keep learning.